and welcome to our second March edition of Florida by the Numbers. I'm Sheridan Meek, research economist for the Florida Chamber Foundation, and I'm excited to give you an update on the metrics that matter to securing Florida's future. There have been many changes reported relating to the economy and the Florida 2030 Blueprint, all tracked on the floridascorecard.org. Highlights include an updated number of 1.42 million net new jobs that are needed by 2030, current labor market figures, an update to consumer sentiment, and changes in the housing market. Looking first at the labor market, Florida's employment approached 9.7 million in February, up more than 38,000 jobs from January and up more than 427,000 jobs added since February 2022. This gain continues Florida's trend of year-over-year gain every month since April of 2021. The 427,400 jobs created over the past year represents an annual growth rate of 4.6%. While all major industries saw employment gains, leisure and hospitality again saw the largest raw and percentage gain over the past year, continuing its rapid resurgence from a deep pandemic decline. The leisure and hospitality industry also saw the strongest gains in the past month, growing by 0.8%, or roughly twice as fast as the 0.4% overall growth rate over the month. We note here that employment in the manufacturing and information industries, while up over the prior year, each experienced a decrease in employment from January to February. Financial activities employment saw a relatively modest increase, reversing some recent losses attributable to rising interest rates in autumn 2022. We'll be watching the March jobs report with keen eyes towards this sector, given another recent rate increase from the Federal Reserve. Shifting focus to unemployment, Florida's unemployment declined by 2,000 people from January to February. It is important to put this decline in unemployment in the context of the number of open jobs in the state. Currently, for every 100 open jobs, there are 70 Floridians looking for work. This gap is evidence of a workforce shortage. Florida's labor force needs are greater than the available workers. But how does this compare to the rest of the country? Based on open jobs data for the 10 most populous states in the U.S., Florida has the lowest ratio of unemployed people to open jobs. While this is not a unique challenge, this gap is greater than the next closest in Georgia. Georgia has 88 unemployed people for every 100 open jobs, reflective of a similar labor market challenge. In the middle is Texas, with slightly more unemployed people than open jobs, and lastly, New York, with significantly more unemployed people than open jobs, 158 unemployed for every 100 open jobs. Moving on to the residential housing market, single-family home starts rose to just more than 8,400 in February. Additionally, recently released sales data for existing single-family homes showed an increase to more than 18,600 in February. Although both metrics increased over last month, starts and sales are down significantly from where they were this time last year. Starts are down over 29% from February of 2022, and single-family housing sales are down just above 21%. As you can see in the chart, the current 12-month rolling average is approaching May 2018 levels. Rising interest rates in the past 6 months, in conjunction with significant inflationary pressures on household budgets, have sidelined some would-be homebuyers, powerfully affecting transactions. Despite a decrease in sales and starts over 2022, February's $395,000 single-family median sales price, while only a slight increase from last month, is an increase of 3.5% over the past year. Nearly a third of February's single-family housing sales were paid in cash, slightly more than the national share of 29%. This relatively large share of cash sales reflects the perceived unattractiveness of prevailing mortgage rates compared to recent memory. Speaking of perceptions, Floridians' outlook on the economy remains consistently low, as measured by the Consumer Sentiment Index. As 2022 came to an end, the index annual average was 64.3 points. This is the lowest calendar year level on record since the consumer sentiment was first tracked in 1985. This is evidence that the recent period of high inflation has affected consumer sentiment to a much greater extent than the pandemic. February's index value of 67.2 was nearly a 2-point increase in consumer sentiment, and kept Florida somewhat more optimistic than the national consumers as a whole. However, March data revealed that at the national level, consumer sentiment declined, reversing an upward trend over the past few months. We'll be looking at the April 4th release of Florida consumer sentiment to see if the Sunshine State can break away from the national trend or not. Recently released sales tax collections data reported that more than $4.6 billion of state sales taxes were collected in January. These collections, typically reflecting sales made in December, were nearly $286 million more than the prior January. This growth rate of 6.6% outpaced inflation over the same time period, and as such, is continued evidence of real economic growth over the past year. The FloridaScorecard.org continues to be a resource for all of the metrics I discussed today, as well as many others. The Florida Scorecard and our team's accompanying research on these metrics is made possible by the leadership of the Florida Chamber Foundation's Community Development Partners. One final Florida by the Numbers reminder: you still have a chance to join our movement to prepare our state for the nearly 2.8 million net new Floridians we expect by 2030, and attend the 2023 Florida Transportation Growth and Infrastructure Solution Summit. This year's event, to be held April 19th in Orlando, will convene leaders from across the state to explore the challenges and opportunities to connect Florida's communities to one another and to global markets as we work to preserve the environmental and community assets that support Florida's continued economic growth. Scan the code on the screen and register today. If you want to stay up to date with the metrics that matter to the future of Florida as soon as they are released, there are a couple of additional ways you can connect with us. Follow @FloridaBTN on Twitter, where important figures and analysis are tweeted as soon as data is released. Also, check out the Florida Scorecard for hundreds of data points at the state and county level. Both current and time series data are available to help Florida's leaders lead. If you have any questions at all regarding the topics we explored today or the work of the Florida Chamber Foundation, please reach out to Dave Sobush, our Director of Research, or any member of the Foundation team through the information on the screen. From everyone at the Chamber, thanks for tuning in to learn more about the metrics that matter for Florida's future. We hope to see you back here next month for another edition of Florida by the Numbers.